Welcome back to Algebra 1. We're talking about Chapter 4, Section 4, the slope of a line. So what we've been talking about is graphing. That you can take an equation and graph it if it's got an x and a y and an equals. That you can plot points. You can have 2 points and draw a line through them. And that's another way of graphing, having a graph, a line go through 2 points. Now, so we're going to learn another aspect of the graph, and it's called slope. And slope, you know from skiing, right? That's my snow skiing. I've done that before. I might tell you that story one day, but because it was scary. But anyway, you know, like from things like going down a mountain, that how steep it is the slope. So we have, it looks sort of like the side of a mountain and a slope, and we can figure out what slope is for a line. So what we're talking about is slope. Now there's a symbol for slope. What do you think it would be? Maybe an S, maybe a mountain? No, none of those things. It makes no sense. It's the letter M for mope. Nope, who knows? So there must have been a fight over symbols and slope lost because it got M for some reason. So let me show you. So I have these 2 points that I've graphed. 5, 7, and 3, 4. There's 5, 7, and there's 3, 4. Remember it's X then Y. So like how I'll graph this is I went out 5 on the X, up 7 on the Y and put a dot. How I did this one is I went out 3 and up 4 and put a dot. Okay, so this slope here, if you go from this dot to that dot, and you can tell this in your book, look, you can look very carefully, and if on the graph paper you have these squares, here's some graph paper squares, imagine that, all blown up huge, and say you've got a line going through it. You can look and see where the line exactly crosses in the corner, where it exactly reaches the corner, and you can count how many squares you go over and up, and that's one way of figuring out the slope. It's just by looking very carefully where the line crosses the edges of the squares of the graph paper. So when you look at your book, look at that and see if you can see what the slope is by looking at where it crosses. Okay, but I don't have graph paper. So, but you can see that I went from here to here, I went over 2 lines, and I went up 3 squares to get there. Slope is the up over the over, but they don't call the up, they call it rise, and they call the over run. To me it sounds like a little football player. See, here he is running with his whooshes behind him. He's running along the x-axis. And then rise, it makes me think of the people in the bleachers. Sometimes bleachers are called risers. And so here are the people in the risers rising up, and here's my football player running over. So it's rise over run, which means you write your up over the over. So this slope is 3/2. The slope of that line I drew is 3/2 because I went up 3 and over 2. And you put the up on top and the over on bottom. Rise over run. I think they like that because they both start with the letter R. Rise over run. Alright, so here's another idea about it. Okay. You can also do this without just looking at the graph. You can do it algebraically with this formula. Now what the formula is the change in y over the change in x. You notice that's a triangle. It's the Greek letter delta. Don't you feel smart learning some Greek letters? We're in fancy math now. So change in y over change in x is another way to write the formula for slope. Or another way to do it is it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 2's come first, 1's come later. Y's go on top, x's go on bottom. Now, what does that mean? How do you know what's x1 and x2? Once again, had the hardest time learning this because of the concussion, but this is how it is. To know which ones are the 1s or the 2s, you only look at the x's. Y's don't matter at all. and so this is x. Whichever is less are the ones, whichever is more are the 2's. So, like with this, 3 is less than 5. So, I'm going to rewrite them down here. 3, 4, and 5, 7. Okay? 3 is less than 5, so these are the ones. This is x1, and its buddy y has to be 1, 2. They stay together. So because 5 is more, it's the 2, and 7 is the y2. Now we would put it in the formula. So here's our formula. Y2 is what we need first, so we go find it. So I always label what's x1 and y1, x2 and y2 first, because I have to be organized to get it right, okay? So first in my formula is y2. I go find it and I write it down. The next thing on the formula is the minus sign. Write it down before you do anything else. If you don't, y1 will be negative, and you'll drop a negative and you'll get it wrong. Trust me, I've been teaching this for decades. That's where you're going to mess up, is if you don't write your negative before you go see what y1 is. Okay, so now we're going to see what y1 is. It's 4. Draw our divide sign. Now we go get x2. x2 is 5. Draw your minus before you even go look to see what x1 is. x1 is 3. Now we do our math. 7 minus 4 is 3. 5 minus 3 is 2. Ta-da! Same thing we had. That it was up 3 over 2. That's slope. Not terrible. You can do it. Alright, so let's do some more. What if we have these 2 points? Okay, which is less? That one is. So that's x1, that's y1. This is x2, y2. Now we're going to fill it into our formula. y2 is 4. Draw your minus sign. Go get y1, it's 2. Draw your divided bar. Go get your x2, it's 3. Draw your minus sign before you go get x1, because it's negative and it'll throw you off. Okay? 4 minus 2 is 2. 3, 2 negatives make a positive. 3 plus 2 is 5. So this one is 2/5. So if we graph this one, here's my little graph here, I would have this point, -2, 2, and I have this point 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there's my slope. I kind of missed the points. If we draw real big points, it'll look good. All right, that's our first one. Do you see how that's uphill? This is a positive slope, just like this is positive. How you can remember that is if you look at just this quadrant and pretend it's the stock market and the stock market's going up, ooh, everybody's happy. It's positive, right? So that's a positive slope. Okay, let's try this one. So which one is less? -1 is, so that's x1, that's y1, that's x2, that's y2. Fill it into our formula. First we get y2, then our minus sign, then go get y1. Then we're going to do x2, which is 3, then our minus sign, and then x1, -1. Now 2 minus 2 is 0. 2 negatives make a positive, so 3 plus 1 is 4. What's 0 divided by 4? 0. 0 slope. So let's see what this looks like. X is -1. Y is 2. There's a dot. X2 is 3. Y is 2. Make a dot. Oh, 0 slope. It's a flat line. Flat line. Okay, let's try this one. 0, 0, -3. And this pen's kind of dying. I'm going to grab a new one. All right. What's less? That one is. x1, y1, x2, y2. Go look at our formula. y2 is -3. Put our negative sign. Put y1 as 0. Go back to our formula. X2 is 3. Do our minus sign. X1 is 0. So negative 3 minus 0 is negative 3. 3 minus 0 is 3. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. Let's see what it looks like. Our first point is 0, 0. That's the origin. Our next one is x is 3. Y is negative 3. So our point is down here. It's going downhill. That's a negative slope. Uphill, positive slope. Downhill, negative slope. Okay, let's try, where's my last one? Oh, here it is. Let's try that one. Okay, which is less? Oh, they're the same. This one's weird. We'll call this one x1, that one y1, this one x2, this one y2, but we know something's wrong because they're actually the same. But we'll call these the x1. So this is y2, so it's 1 minus y1 is 4. Now x2 is 2 minus x1 is 2. 1 minus 4 is negative 3. 2 minus 2 is 0. What does it do on your calculator if you do negative 3 divided by 0? It says error, because this is not allowed. You are not allowed to divide by 0 in math. And I explained to you why. It's because it violates the law of physics, the law of conservation of mass and energy, which is matter can neither be created or destroyed. If I had a cake and told you to cut it into 0 pieces, you couldn't. Because even if you didn't cut it at all, it'd be one piece of cake. If you ate it, it'd be a lot of pieces all broken down into your molecules. But for it to be 0, you would have to destroy the atoms themselves. We can't divide by 0 because it violates physics. So this is called undefined slope. It's not allowed. Your calculator won't allow you to do it. Now, we actually can graph it. So if you go to these points, if x is 2 and y is 4, we have a point right here. And if x is 2 and y is 1, we have a point. It goes straight up and down. So this is the undefined slope. It can be graphed. This is a line, but it doesn't have what's called a defined slope. And the reason why is the equivalent of dividing by 0, which we don't do in math because it violates the principles of science. Now, the last thing is if you have a graph and it's got 2 lines, we'll make it like this. The one that has the steeper slope, like the top line here, has the greater rate of change. Remember I told you that triangle is delta, it stands for change or difference. And you can use it from now on in math and science. Anybody who sees delta knows it means change. You don't have to write that word out anymore. But a steeper slope means it has a greater rate of change. There's another problem in your book where they give you a point and they give you a slope and they want to know what y equals at this other point. The way they do it, you can do it, but the easiest way to do that problem is to graph it. So if you have a graph and you have this point, x is negative 2, y is 1, we have a dot right there, and the slope is up to over 3. So I go up to, and I go over 3. 1, 2, 3. And I put another dot, and then I go up 2 more, and then go over 3 more, and put another dot. I can see that when this point here, x is 4, y is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can use slope to move around a graph. And we're going to talk more about that, how to use slope to graph things. All right? Math is fun.